Hey everyone, just a quick note here. We had some audio issues on Ingy's recording that I did not catch until near the end of the episode, and so the audio is a little bit rough, but we tried to clean it up as much as we could. Just keep that in mind. Sorry about that. We did try to keep the levels and everything else as we could, but we'll do better next time. It was something that I should have caught in the beginning and just didn't. So otherwise, I think it was a great episode. Had a lot of fun talking to Ingy and learning about how YAML is created. So I think you'll like it too. Welcome to Fork Around and Find Out, the podcast about building, running, and maintaining software and systems. Hello and welcome to Fork Around and Find Out, the podcast all about forking around and finding out. Today on the show, we are bringing you all stuff about YAML. And if you don't know, we are going to have some load-bearing white spaces in this conversation. Autumn, don't shake your head. It's okay. It wasn't a good joke, but I tried. So I am excited that today on the show, we have Ingy.net's a creator and maintainer of the YAML spec, and really excited to have you hear how it started, what you've been doing with it, and kind of what the future is.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Autumn. So my name's Ingy, and I created YAML with Clark and Oren back. We started in 2001. Those guys were working on simplifying XML, which was going to take over the world around, 1999, 2000, 2001 era and beyond. But and so they were part of this mailing list called SML, and Simplify XML. And then they kind of got sick of it. And Clark was a Python guy, so he made up something that looked like Python, and he called it yet another markup language, and YAML, and he got YAML.org. And interestingly, I was working in a place called Active State up in Canada, in Vancouver, and they were famous for putting Perl on Windows back in the late 90s. And so at Active State, they decided they were going to be the enterprise face of open source software, back in late 90s. And so, so they got like some of the top guys, like the Perl release manager at the time was Gurusamy Sarati, and then the co-author of the big fat Python book remember that one from way back when, the O'Reilly book?
Yeah.
Yeah, so David Asher and a bunch of other, really heavy open source guys, and me. I just like it, done something cool in Perl and got on the front page of the Perl Journal or something. So I saw these guys at OSCON and they had the coolest shirts. So I'm like, I want to go move up to Vancouver from Seattle and work with those guys.
Cool shirts. How to get into a project.
What was on the shirts? Because I feel like this is important. Those story.
They just had good branding. Active State did. It was like it just said AS, and it kind of had this it was kind of white stripesy, right? Because it had it was before the white stripes. It had black, red, and white was kind of the color theme, and it just looked cool. Anyway, so I moved up to Vancouver and worked there. But at that time, I had made a Perl serialization thing that looked like Python, and it was called Data Denter for indented data. And it was just a CPAN module. It's still out there. It says go use YAML instead now. But somebody saw this SML project in Data Denter and wrote an email to the two of us. It's like one line saying, "Hey, you guys should meet." So Clark called me on the phone. I gave my phone number. He called me. We talked for 4 hours, and YAML was on its way. We just worked on it every day for the next 5 years over email. So I don't know if you knew that. Why would you? But YAML was entirely spec'd over emails, about 20, 30 emails a day for 5 years, and
the original goal though was people hated writing the brackets of XML.
Well, that was their take on it. Yeah, they wanted people were starting. XML wasn't really made for data, if I may say that, because it was made for textual markup, right? That's actually a markup language, and so they were trying to serialize data with it. And data, even then, Perl and Python had the same, hash array, scalar, or single value data model. And then other languages followed suit. So, I call it the JSON data model. And so, yeah, so XML doesn't fit well into that at all. Um,
Where do
you
you
can
draw the
try to fit.
line? Where do you draw the line there of like a markup language versus strictly data?
Well, okay, so like, if I say I love Justin Garrison's podcast and I want to bold love, then I would mark up the word. But like you know, in data, in Python data set, you wouldn't really do it that way,
You
right?
don't bold
Yeah,
bold
yeah.
part of
So
your
marked,
query.
you use markdown, that's another markup language, right?
Yeah.
Obviously in the name. So yeah, after like about 6 months of working on YAML, I'm like, you guys know this isn't a, a markup language, right? And they're like, yeah, it's a serialization language, which
Hmm.
means, write your data out to disk and read it back in, or send it across the wire to some other program and read it back into memory. So we're like, yeah, but we already got the domain name, we already got the name. So then I think Oren came up with it, and Oren thinks I came up with it. But I'm like, how about one of us said, YAML ain't markup language. It's just the kind of
Recursive.
recursive
Yep.
backronym.
That's so
Uh,
cool.
yeah, so
What was the comparison or possibly competition with JSON?
well, that's kind of funny. So I thought JSON came out in 2006. That's when we all saw it. That's when the world saw it, kind of overnight, and it was so
Yeah.
easy to implement that the implementation's just like, it was almost like when TOML came out a few years later. Somebody put out a spec and made it pretty simple, and then everybody jumped on it. It's like, oh, I want to be the GitHub inventor's author of his markup language, which was, I don't know if you ever saw the first spec of that, but it was like just a big attack. It was just anti-YAML, right? It was like literally said, and then it ended with, and if you don't believe me, you haven't had enough whiskey or something like that. It was just a silly spec at the time. Thank you. Um, sorry. I was just delivered coffee, so I had to take a sip there. Okay, so uh,
But JSON was around 2006.
yeah,
You all
so
started this 2001.
right, we started in 2001, and then we looked at it and we're like, oh, that's our flow form looks exactly like this JSON thing, and then we're like, look closer, and we're like, oh, it is exactly the same, except
Hmm.
for three really minor details, like between a key value pair, you need a space after a colon in YAML, and in JSON you don't, but you know, JSON always uses the curlies for mappings, and it always quotes its keys. It only uses string keys. So we're like, okay, if you're in a curly brace thing and you um, have double quoted key, then there's not a space isn't required after the colon. So then we're JSON compatible. Is it like a minor
Hmm.
thing that we did to the spec? There's three really minor things that we did to the spec, and we made. So at YAML 1.1 was out, and we went to YAML 1.2. One of the main points of that was just to make us a superset of JSON, or JSON a subset of us officially.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, but I look back in history, JSON was started in 2001. So, it's just like, I think we started to get traction within the Ruby language, which I really credit for getting us off the ground. They shipped it with core probably 2003 or four, so
Hmm.
way too early, but, they were kind of new kids on the block at the time, and it was pre-Rails era, and yeah, so.
What were some of the surprises along the way? Like you mentioned, getting in Ruby is one thing. I feel like the YAML explosion of Kubernetes has been just it
Yeah.
became the thing
Well,
everyone loved to hate at some point. And it's just like,
yeah.
oh, we
Well,
got to write YAML. Like, well, it's been around for a long time. Like, what are those surprises along the way after 24 years of maintaining this
Justin, we actually met at
at KubeCon?
KubeCon. I don't
Yeah,
remember if you like remember our reactions. Like I think it was JJ from IBM said,
yeah.
"Hey, Justin, here's the YAML guy," and you like raised your fist like you're gonna hit me in the head or something like that. And I knew you were kidding, but yeah, I'm like that guy. And so this was my first KubeCon was last fall, and I'm expecting because you get all kinds of hate online, right? It's like, and not a whole lot of love, So it's just like, oh, this is going to be terrible, but I'll go own it. That's fine. And I got some exciting new stuff to share. But I went out and like, besides like you and a couple other people, like, mock. not hating. It was all love. It was crazy. I mean, like you go to people and it's like, they're kind of excited to meet the YAML guy and get a selfie, some of them, but they're like, they truly like, I'm like, tell me what you don't like. It's like, I like it. It's great. I like trying to explore, um, and there's like, it's almost running on 20 competitors to the YAML crown, as it were. Somebody at KubeCon coined that. I didn't come up with that, but, you know, and it's fair. I mean, it's like, there's always, YAML's just one way to do things, but it seems to be growing popular. So you asked about along the way. The first one was Ansible. So,
Hmm.
all of a sudden there was that company whose whole product was front-ended by YAML. That was the first time I'd seen that. And I'm like, whoa, that's pretty cool. And then, YAML was already like catching on. It's just kind of, I don't even know what part of the exponential curve it's on. And it's not slowing down. It should be, but it's not quite yet. And there's zero money behind it, which is, it's a good testament, but also,
I mean, should there be money behind specs? Like that seems like any spec might die if there's money. Like I look at HCL from HashiCorp, right? Like, or HashiCorp, right? Like it's their spec that they invented for simplified JSON. And the more and more I see that evolve over time, like I don't think that has the lifespan of YAML because of just
I could say all kinds of things about it. It's like I don't want to offend Hashimoto or anything. But
I think
I find
Mitchell
it
made his money.
hilarious.
He's pretty good.
Well, kind of riffing off of, all JSON is YAML. And actually, there's an attack probably around 2018 where some guys like, oh, there's these edge cases having to do with surrogate pairs or the C1 section of unprintable characters. And we're like, okay, we had to get together. We have a group of 5 of us now that are on the core maintenance team. And we got together and we like, and it was a Hacker News thread. And, so people kept finding little edge cases, and we had to take on, I think, 5 of them. And we're like, yeah, it's only a subset as far as we know. We could be proven wrong. And, people come every once in a while. And we just turned out on the right side of it is a subset, but it doesn't mean I kind of say I'd, buy anybody a beer who can find that the case where it's actually not. Um, One beer.
One beer.
Yeah. Yeah, but back to HashiCorp. So like JSON, if you don't like HCL, you can use JSON, which means you can use YAML, but that is never mentioned by HashiCorp. And I think it's just like they're like, we don't, because YAML was well out, by the time all this Hashi stuff came out. Now, Hashi tools are great, but it's like, you could say that you could use YAML. It's like, should be people's choice. If HCL is your preferred, then I never try to make technologies that like say don't use his or hers, use mine, right? I just say I put my stuff out there and use it if you want, right? So
Sure.
type of thing, yeah. But so we'll talk about Wise, which is how I pronounce YAML script is YS, so it's like a two-letter Wise would be pronounced Wise, right? Yeah, so, but you can put it on. So I gave a talk on Helm Wise, which is YAML script applied Helm charts at that talk, and that went over really well. But the thing that when people saw a side-by-side comparison of Wise charts done with Wise compared to charts done with Go templating, which, by the way, when you have Go templating in your YAML files, they're no longer valid YAML files, right? Not until they're rendered. But
Sure.
Wise embedded is like makes them half the size, does the same thing, and is valid YAML, so you could use YAML tools on it. Anyway, I'm kind of jumping ahead of that.
So wait, like that gives me a question. So I was a maintainer for a Helm chart for a very long time, and I hated Go templating.
Cool. I'm on the Helm team now. I have been since November. I meet with Farina and all the guys every week.
It was a Microsoft hackathon that I showed up at, which it was probably before a KubeCon at some point. I went to the Microsoft offices and they're like, we want people to do Helm, and so I learned how to write a Helm charts, and then I PR'd it to the repo, and then I became the maintainer for it, and I maintained it for years. And I was like, I don't use this software. I just used it to learn how to write a Helm charts. So hopefully it works for y'all. But it was a thing that I was building, and I was like, I don't like this Go templating. I don't like templating in general. It always kind of has edge cases, right? Like whether it's Go or Python or whatever, right? Like at some form, like Jinja is going to fall apart just as easily as Go templates.
It's an attack vector, certainly in some cases. I took a close look at the Go templating and a couple years ago, and I'm like, I can't say it's as bad as I thought it might be. Like I looked for ways that it could go horribly wrong, and I'm like, it's not too bad. So,
but then you're saying, so like Wise, YAML script is an alternative for that. Helmwise is an alternative for doing Go templating.
Yes, currently it's a post renderer. There's you could actually go to just search for Helmwise. But anyway, it's a post renderer such that you can replace a little bit. It'll work with the Go templating, or you could replace all the Go templating. If you replace all of it, then your template files are valid YAML, and it's just if you were to go to yamlscript.org/Helmwise, you could. That page is just a side-by-side comparison, and you can see it in front of your face. But so. But I'm working with the Helm 14 to make it a more first-class citizen of without the post-rendering factor, if possible.
Well, I guess let's take a step back.
Yes.
What is the point of YAML script?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's kind of funny because people definitely. People ask me to describe the use case for YAML script, and I was like, well, do you have an hour? It's like there's not an elevator pitch, or I haven't got the perfect one yet.
Well, we got at least 40 minutes here. So.
Well, okay, there we go. So this year I focused on Wise is going to be focused on helping DevOps. So, I mean, Wise is a complete programming language with a complete ecosystem because it builds on top of another language and inherits all of the goodness of that language. There's a lot of great things about it, but where it really can hit a mark for people is to use it in conjunction with whatever DevOps tools you're using. And even with that, like, so say you had GitHub Actions or Circle CI or a couple that I've played with, even though they don't load YAML files with Wise, which, by the way, YAML script ships as a Wise CLI. That's one way to use it, and it also ships as a YAML replacement loader in every language, where every is 11 so far. But I have a list of 45 languages that I want to ship this to in the next 2 years. And they're really simple. It's a FFI binding to shared library, so it's really easy to create the next language. I just need, usually I try to find somebody else to do it. I'm like, oh, you want it on this language? Actually, somebody did that last month at KubeCon. They're like, hey, do you have Crystal yet? I'm like, no, you want to add it? And they did. I got a pull request 3 days later. So
nice.
I don't know if you've heard of the Crystal language.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. Yeah. And it gets more people involved. I try to get people involved in the project that way. But yeah, it's basically, think of all the things that people try to bolt onto YAML, right? I mean, what are the major problems with YAMLs? You have these 5,000 line YAML config files, right? I mean, it's really great to start your project in YAML where you're using it in the smallest, super clean, and then it just starts growing and growing, and then you have these 5,000 lines. What if you could just compose it like you wouldn't write a 5,000 line Python program, right? You break it up into libraries and subcomponents and all that. Wise, you can do that easily, right? Or you can use modules from, it's not all 100% working yet, but I will have modules working from either written in Wise, written in Clojure, written in Java, written in, because those are base things, written in WASM. That's something I've been working a lot on different WASM technologies recently. Or we actually, right now, we have a system where you can write it in any language, but the linking mechanism is just basically sockets. So it uses local sockets to communicate. So it's more of an RPC type of thing. But basically, as far as you're concerned, you just load the SQLite module that happened to be written in Python, and it just works, right? So from a wise perspective. But then you want interpolation. You want to be able to take different parts of your data and repeat, loops on them. And one of the problems with that with YAML, I'm sure you've heard of anchors and aliases, right? Are you familiar with that feature of YAML? That's where you give a label to a node and then you can reuse it again later in the document. Sure. So people will do things in pure YAML. I mean, there's all kinds of frameworks. The one thing about YAML being not quite finished the way we want it to is it opened up the doors for dozens of projects to actually make money by fixing YAML for their own specific use case. I've always wanted to fix it for everyone. I've always wanted to. We set out to, even Clark and Oren set out to replace all the XML landscape. So that includes, DSL languages, transformation languages, query languages, all the stuff that XML, all the extras that XML came with. And then by the time we got the 1.2 spec out in 2009, they were just moved on to other stuff, and I stuck around. But it was around in 2023, all the pieces came together where I'm like, oh, this is it. I can make YAML script because all the components are there. It was a combination of this closure language, which is CLOJURE, but it's pronounced closure, and it's just it's a Lisp that compiles to JVM bytecode, so jar files. And I'd never programmed Java before, and I'm like, I'm not gonna, go down this route. But then there's another thing called GraalVM native image that will take any jar thing and compile it to native binary or a native shared library. And for 20 plus years, I've been looking for the perfect language to write really high level code instead of C and make shared libraries such that I could bind it anywhere. And then this all came together, and I'm like, and if you look at the YAML script source code, I mean, it's really tight functional code. So, and it produces this whole thing. But then I could instantly, within a few months, I had it bound to 6 languages, and, I could concentrate on binding it to more languages. It's always, but, I more just kind of go with wherever people want me to take it next.
But the use case is still focused for like DevOps professionals in that sort of ecosystem where people might be doing stuff with Kubernetes, where there is a lot of YAML, something else on the like CI/CD pipelines where it's GitLab or something else where it's like this is defined in YAML as well. And that's those areas, because there's so much of it. Is that why you're trying to attack that as a place that people should be using?
I want to make YAML, like any problems that people have with YAML day to day, YAML script can solve about, I'd say 90+% of those. From my standpoint. Autumn, you look like you want
Is there anything that people have ever done with YAML that you weren't expecting, like a use case or just something that was completely out of left field?
Yeah, I mean, and that I love it. Now I want to do it. Okay, so let me give you the example. Comments in the YAML spec. Comments in YAML from the beginning were throwaway. They don't fit into the model. They don't fit into the JSON model. It's like, and you can put them anywhere, right, in a YAML document. So it's like, we wanted to keep comments around, but like now there's probably 50, 60, 70 YAML frameworks out there. That's what I would call a YAML implementation in different languages. Now there's probably half a dozen ones that will do comment round tripping, but they all do it differently, right? So it's so at this point I'm like, oh yeah, we need to actually put out a kind of a side spec of this is maybe the preferred way to do it. So I just this is related. So something huge in YAML just happened 3 or 4 weeks ago. Gustavo Niemeyer wrote Go YAML, and I didn't know this, but it's by far the biggest YAML asset in the world. It's the YAML module that's behind all of Kubernetes. Even the Kubernetes SIGs YAML is actually just has all of that code embedded in it because Gustavo 3 years ago stopped maintaining it. I've talked to Gustavo now, and the reason he stopped maintaining it is because he has a very high level job that demands his full attention. It wasn't that he wanted to abandon this, he just had to. There's no time left in his daily life to work on this anymore. So, um, and he said, I can't give it away because I don't know if it'll fall into disrepair. And at first that's like, well, why can't you give it away? But, after reaching out to him, and he's like, well, I could consider giving it to the YAML organization, but I'd still kind of have the same problem. So I'm like, well, we'll just take it over and run with it, but not as you won't give it to us. We'll just make a fork, as it were, a copy, and say that we're carrying this forward. And if you want to, you could. We're a couple of weeks away from launching this, but officially, like, this is the new way to use Go YAML. But it's going to be a huge boon to Go programming and the Kubernetes thing to have all of this unforked, and like the Kubernetes SIGs fork is going to use us as its um, upstream because I reached out to them and I'm like, why don't you join us? So they got one of their top guys. I just reached out to anybody who's really involved in this and
Yeah.
had a stake in it, and it's like, yeah, join the team. If we'll never break a release, will never break your stuff because you're on the team. You'll make sure it never breaks, that kind of thing. So that's
That's
really
why.
exciting.
Oh,
Oh,
that's why I'm not sure why people are more ready to put developers behind open source projects, because having a seat at the table and knowing that you won't get broken and being able to contribute is huge.
yeah. And I was trying to tie this back to comments. Gustavo, when I did talk to him he was so busy, we got to talk for 15 minutes, but he said that he had add comment support to Go YAML, which I don't know, and I don't think a lot of people use, but it's yeah, so comments was something that people just did, and I mean, we didn't know what YAML was going to be for back in the day, and we made a little list of use cases and anti-use cases, and configuration was in the anti. We're like, people won't want this for config. I mean, I don't know why we thought that at the time, and that's all people use it for
Oh,
right
that's
now.
funny.
Yeah, I think we're leaning towards grocery lists, and I just I
When
don't.
I look at the YAML script like homepage, the examples here on the homepage have a lot of colons that remind me of Perl. Uh, I don't know if that's maybe that's a closure. I don't know if that's a something coming through, but is there a reason that it to me feels like it's different, or it's a lot different than what YAML typically was? Like when I first envisioned, when you told me YAML script, I was like, okay, this is gonna be like YAML with some like embedded like commands, almost like Bash has, like escape shells, like subshells or whatever. Like I'm just gonna have like some backticks in my YAML that like
Oh, I
does
see.
something.
Yeah.
This feels different with multiple colons and my imports and data. Is there a reason you want it to be a lot different? Because probably maybe because to lose some historical baggage. Is there a reason you want it to look like certain languages were adopted by something? Is there something that inspired you to do it this way?
Well, I know what you're talking about. So like you'll see a double colon instead of a colon between
Yeah.
a key and a value. Well, here's the deal. Every YAML file that you know of is valid YAML script, right? And it just does exactly what it did. YAML script will load that perfectly, and then you can use whatever the tool does. It can convert, just loads it as data, and you can convert it to different formats or whatever. But it's a YAML loader at the end of the day. If you put bang YS at the top, then you said, okay, this is still YAML, but like some of these things might be variables or function names rather than strings, some of the unquoted
Mm-hmm.
things. So any mapping, array, or scalar, those are the three nodes that make up a YAML or a JSON document, can either be code or data. So, if you were just writing a program in YAML script, it would be you wouldn't really use data mode unless you needed a clean piece of data somewhere. But for the use case that we're talking about, where we're helping DevOps stuff, they're starting with their YAML files, but then they want to split it off and then load in a different part, or they want to call a merge function with a specific thing. So double colon says switch from the key, which is in data mode, to this, the value here is going to be code. And it's going to be a code expression. And it's going to be, there's a lot of really clean ways to do code expressions. But then for the next key, it'll switch back to data mode unless you, so that's why you see, if you look at those lines where you're seeing double colons, you'll see the thing on the left is probably just a string, but it's unquoted because that's the clean way to write YAML. You could put quotes around it. And the thing on the right is an expression.
Yeah. And the idea here is to allow people to incrementally adopt, right? Like where you say, oh, I can take out this one time. I have this one variable that I use 8 times in my YAML file. It was like I use the name of Kubernetes cluster, whatever it is, right? It's like, oh, I can just store that as a value at the top and then replace that value. So if I need to rename it or reuse this file or load from somewhere else, you can do that easily without saying I have to rewrite everything in this new language.
Yeah, let me tell you a little story. So, and this is really cool. And I've done this with a number of CI/CD systems. So let's take GitHub Actions. So a friend of mine had a really hairy set of workflows. And I looked through them and I'm like, oh yeah, YAML script can help out here. So what I did was I first, and there's a number of ways you can do this, but like, let's say you put all of the YAML script files in one directory, but they're going to generate the original YAML that you had from clean sources, right? So the first step in, if I take on a brand new repo of doing this, is I would copy all of the YAML files, which are YAML script, I've already said that, into the new source place. And then I will call YAML script on those to gen all of the files in the place where they're supposed to be. And then one time I will do I have a little script that will make sure that they're semantically equivalent. Was there something about that conversion that made them not be semantically equivalent? Even though they're syntactically correct, they could be slightly different somehow. Yeah. But
checker.
Yep. And then once I've done that, then cleaning up, I just make the sources look as beautiful. I like try different things. I'm like, oh, he reuses this a bunch of times. I'm going to put this in another file and then include it. He uses all this repeating things. I can make a function. I just calling that function 20 times instead of that big blob of data. But every time I do this, like I'll make a small change and then I'll run the, make update or whatever, however the command that I did that will convert all the files. And if there's any diff in the result files, then I've done it wrong, right? I haven't cleanly refactored. So it's just a great workflow. And then I just, I'll just spend like a big whack of time doing this. And then I presented it to him and he's like, this is amazing. And then he took it even further and really dove in. I'll share that in the comments. I assume there's comments.
We can add a link in the show notes. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So remind me to do that.
How does that compare to the workflow that someone might have with like QLang, right? Like I look at Q as a way to generate YAML. And I can say, oh, I can take the output. In that case, you're starting from scratch, right? Because QLang is a different. It's not necessarily taking in the valid YAML. But I know there's a lot of tools and options that people have been trying to do. So like, oh, well, I want to write real code, or I want to write Python, or I want to do something more powerful. Where's that trade-off of YAML script lets you start from what you have and slowly kind of change it over time versus one of those tools where it's like, oh, I can go right to what I think the end goal is of let my engineers write code in whatever language they want and generate the YAML from that.
Well, I think that you answered the question that you were asking. I mean, you were saying, if you want to decide to do that, if you're already a Python team and you're on a brand new project and we're going to write Python code that generates our config.
You break it up for me.
Oh. Is it?
I don't know if your video froze.
Oh, that's weird. Let me try something, a little experiment.
Are you back?
I'm still here. I'm just seeing like a...
I can hear you now, but your video is really slow and blurry.
Yeah, your video went real blocky, and then I lost all audio for
So what should we do? What do you? I could leave and come back like that, but I don't know if that would mess you up.
Let's try killing video, and see if the audio clears up.
Yeah. Sure, we can try that. Should we all kill it or just me?
I can. Adam, you can kill it too. Let's see. Let's see if that audio is good.
Okay. How's it going?
I hear you much better now.
Okay, great.
Sweet. Let's start. You can start that question again.
Yeah, I don't remember the question.
Starting either with, from where they're at with YAML script and saying, or with
Right.
YAML and saying, I want to go from YAML to YAML script and clean this up, or starting with something like a QLang or something else that's is a all from scratch sort of rewrite that generates the same YAML, which can give you the same workflow that you're describing, but in different contexts, right? Where one is iterating in checking versus starting from scratch and checking.
Yeah. So QLang is, I mean, it's awesome. So I look at it and I like look for stuff to steal, right? I mean, that's how you make a good language. You look at what's great and you see if that fits into your language. YQ is another a tool that's really great and that uses YAML and does things like that YAML script can't do yet. And YAML script does things that YQ can't do. Um, so when I actually ask like the LLMs, I'm like, tell me about Q, and it's like here's the advantages, disadvantages, and some of the like the disadvantages would be um, that people really are used to YAML and they have to learn this new system, right? So,
Hmm.
but if you're starting as a Q shop, great. If there was a tool that could turn all of your YAML files into Q, and maybe there is, I don't know, great. That's a free one. Whoever runs Q can have that idea for free. Um, but yeah, because I do the same thing. I'm like, somebody told me all the stuff that you're doing is great, but if somebody has YAML files that are 5,000 lines long and they work, they're not going to switch to YAML script. And I'm like, fair. And they're like, unless you give them a tool that does it for them automatically. And I'm like, yeah, good point. So um, I think I want to make YAML is great, but it was extremely limited. The whole point of YAML script or WISE is that it tries to make YAML as good as better than Python, better than Q, um, you know, at least for certain things. So um, and I don't know. I have no problem with doing that. I'm not like I said. I'm not trying to compete. I'm just trying to make great stuff. So
Yeah.
and I think that so I was talking to Amazon AWS the other day. Um, to a guy in there, and I was asking about his products. And so one is the CDK, the Cloud Development Kit,
Uh-huh.
and basically they're doing exactly what you said. They have like half a dozen languages that make YAML that your team might already be familiar with. And I'm like, well, you should throw YAML script in as one of those languages. You don't have to throw the others out, but I bet YAML script would fit really nicely in there because like you said, if you're starting and you already have YAML, you kind of have to. It's like converting anything from one system to another is usually kind of a waste of time, in my opinion. It's like a lot of companies will switch from, like, say, a language like Ruby to Java or Go, and they'll come up with reasons, because they can hire more developers or that kind of thing. And maybe those are true, but it's, you have a working system. Build the new stuff in Go or Java or whatever, and keep your old stuff working if you really company wise. I'm always, you know,
I feel
do
like
what works. Yeah.
my experience is new things come in from the new projects, the new whatever initiative that says like, hey, we want to do this thing, and we no longer write. We don't like Ruby anymore. We're going to do Rust because
Yeah.
whatever reason, right? Like people are interested in it, and that helps getting that excitement in a developer that says like, hey, I get to write something new. I really want to work on this project. I don't want to write the same Rails app that I did for the last 15 years or whatever it is. But at some point there's a tipping moment when enough of the new stuff is written in the new language and you kind of lose the ability to modify and change and maintain the old languages, whether because those people have moved on, whether because
Yeah.
they just got so kind of old and people didn't know how it worked anymore that just like, wow, we have one Ruby developer now that has to maintain 18 different projects.
Fair, fair. But like, when you first did the decision, just like, oh, we're not going to be a Ruby shop, we're going to be a Haskell shop. I don't know, I just made that up, but we're going to be a Rust shop. Does that mean you have to go and replace every piece of Ruby code, because it's not Rust? No, it doesn't. It's like, I just I think a really smart CEO or CTO builds off of what they have and moves to the new thing. And then it's like, yeah, we're losing all our Ruby stuff. It's like, okay, well, maybe we need to take our more important things and convert them over now. But, it should never be the goal of a company that's trying to survive and make money and keep their people employed to, replace every line of code from the old to the new. I think that's silly, personally.
Well, and I don't think that the most companies don't decide they're going to be a new type of language. They're going to kind of experiment with it, and then at some point they realize they are mostly writing in that new language with the engineers. So it kind of evolves over time. But I also think that in general, at least with big technology companies or large companies in general, that there's always a state of flux where people are there's always some replatforming or initiative to modernize or move either documentation to a new wiki, code to a new CI/CD, apps to new languages. Like that's always happening, and things don't ever stay still. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but there is just always this like constant busy work that happens of none of this is making us money. This
It can
doesn't.
happen that way. I mean, all you said is valid, but I think there's also times when you get a new CTO and he has to make a name for himself. So he's like, we're going to switch all of development to this. And that's the kind of thing that I think is,
Yeah, empire
and then,
building.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Thank
Well,
you,
they got to
Autumn.
make that big impact to earn their giant stock
Exactly,
stockpiles.
right?
Well,
Right,
it
right.
also seems like right now or big tech companies are almost pushing like organizations or companies as a whole over to whatever they decide they want to maintain. Amazon used to be really Java heavy, and now they're pushing JavaScript really hard and
Mhm.
Rust, which I mean, Rust is a good language for a lot of things, but it seems like they've picked what they want to invest in and kind of keep it going. So
And usually that involves some sort of vilification of the old, right? Where you're like, oh, you're doing Java still? That sucks, right? You should be writing Rust now because it's safe typed and whatever, like all the memory safety benefits and things that they can claim is like you have to get to the new thing.
well, sometimes it's bullying through like documentation, which I don't think they're doing that. I think Amazon will always be a Java shop, but I think for the new infrastructure, all of the documentation, or not all of it, but a large majority of it and a large majority of the examples are being done in JavaScript. So that's kind of the option. You know what I mean? Because there's so many examples in it that it's almost pushing teams that don't even normally use JavaScript to do it for infrastructure. Just like for a long time, they were using Ruby for infrastructure. That always confused me.
Hmm. What
That
do you
probably
think
is.
is the biggest money making language in the world right now? I have a possible answer, but
I think
I
languages make money in a weird way, though. Like a lot of times it doesn't make money, it saves you money on compute and optimization.
Well, and you mean which? Are you just talking about like generally like which apps are written the most that make the most money?
which
Like,
software in the world making the most money? What language?
yeah, I feel like
Uh,
that's got to be C.
yeah, I think it begins with a C. So
COBOL.
yes, I was going to. So I told you about the person I met at KubeCon who wrote the crystal binding for YAML script, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned that, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I found out later that she's a rock star at Red Hat, working on IBM mainframes, and she pointed me at an article, um, and I can link to this article. It's a quote from IBM, and so you got to wonder how they got the numbers. But if they're close, it's amazing. 68% of production workloads are running on IBM mainframes, and of the entire cost of all production workloads, that they account for 6%. So, and you're like, what the heck? How's that possible? Well, COBOL was the language of government, big pharma, medical, and banks, right? And insurance. So the biggest industries in the world that are automated um, are running these old systems that still work, and they have to keep them working, and they don't break, and they don't have any exposure to the internet because they run on systems that were pre-internet, so that they don't get attacked, that kind of thing. So it's really quite interesting that um, I found this out while I was at being around from 2001, I was really big in the Perl community, and to a degree, I still um, that's my family, right? So there's a core developers meeting, and it's in Europe every year. They have it in the spring, the Perl Toolchain Summit, and I was over there, and I was like, "Hey guys, Perl was made to run. I just counted today 25 different architecture platforms. Like we don't even have that many platforms today, but it was made in '87, so it was ported to almost everywhere." And I was like, "Do we still have access to, IBM?" Um, 360 architecture language, which is now called 390. Do we have any of those machines left? Because we had test machines for all this stuff. And they're like, no, we lost them a few years ago. And I'm like, I think I know somebody who can get us access to those. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, that would be cool to test on those things again. But what if Perl became the darling language of because the new COBOL mainframes I'm talking about, they've now made them run Linux, Kubernetes. Seriously, all these modern things they're getting working on IBM mainframes. What if, but not a lot of other languages are targeting that. So what if Perl became the darling language of the COBOL mainframes again? And I don't know. I thought it was quite a interesting possible fairy tale. So we'll see how it goes. I actually met with that working group this morning for the first time to talk about how we get Perl, working full on with IBM stuff again. So
I think the IBM testing goes through Oregon State University, which has mainframes, and I remember just seeing that they were at risk of being defunded.
Yeah, they just got enough funding, I think.
Did they get the
yesterday.
funding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow. I was told that in Seattle here, there's a big mainframe center in South Seattle, and then a guy on the call today, he said he has access to one of these old systems. I'm like, where is it? He's like, it's in Dallas somewhere. And then, I applied to this Red Hat. You can sign up to get access, and yeah, there's like different people running mainframes, and some of these are brand new, like mainframes. Like
Yeah.
people carrying it's like a big laptop. Mainframes used to be like big room size things, but now it's just like plugs in, into a.
Also, a lot of military and government
Oh yeah, I left
run
out military. My
mainframes.
gosh. Yeah, yeah, of course. It's like
Yeah, there's some.
I always wonder if that's like if Java will hold on the same way that Cobalt does, or if Cobalt is just so big. Plus, isn't tape getting really cheap also?
that's funny. Tape. Did you say tape?
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to ship out when I used to do mainframe assembler in the 90s. Yeah, we used to ship our releases on tape, and we used to ship our updates in a mailing, a paper mailing. We'd send out, yeah, just if you want to fix this bug, just change these lines 46 through, whatever. We give line numbers and like lines of code of like, just go change these files, because we shipped the source because like it didn't really matter if you stole the source, you'd never have the machines to run it on, right? It's like it's such a different world.
I was
Yeah.
reading an article about somebody who used to work on mainframes, but they were a TPM, and just their kind of outlook on how like AI is changing everything, but how like everything changed from like mainframes, and then like servers and clouds and all that good stuff. Well, I mean, I guess they're the same thing, but you know what I mean, like the kind of revolution of like how we use things. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned briefly about possibly helping people convert their YAML to YAML script. Is that something that you're looking into? Is that something that you think is going to be, we can take this giant 800 line Istio, which are thousands of line Istio YAML Kubernetes file, and convert it into YAML script?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I'm thinking about it, but like, in the last like this, in 2025, I'm like already got my fingers into, like, I got into WAS, and I said, and to, since KubeCon London, into MCP agentic AI stuff. So it's like, you know, if I think it might be important to experiment with, can you have YAML script MPC service such that, like, some of this could be LL driven. It would be really interesting to see if that was a possibility. But yes, of course, if there's like, basically I work on a need basis right now, right? It's like, if people would be like, yeah, I would use this, but it's a problem converting, then, I go down
Yeah.
that alley, or like, you know, definitely try to find people that would want to work on that. There's so much cool stuff to do with Wise. I mean, it's just like, and with all these new technologies, um, yeah, it's exciting. It's like, I made it. I'm like, I gotta write a list because I have scraps of paper everywhere down. I wrote a list of, these are the kind of biggest projects I'm interested in, and I thought it would be maybe a dozen. It was like 26 as of this morning. It's nuts. Like, the one cool thing about JavaScript is I got so focused on it. I spent like 18 months, 12 hours a day. I'm just like, and I loved it, every minute of it. Took all of last year off. Um, yeah. Now
You've been
currently,
you've been doing technology for a little while now.
a long
How did
while.
you how did you kind of stay interested in technologies from the 90s? I mean, it's been what, 30 years now. Like, what
Uh-huh.
have you been doing the same thing of just finding something interesting and scratching an itch, or are
Every day,
you
man. I mean, it's just like, well, I made two important decisions. I'm like, don't get a big mortgage, and don't. I broke one. I got married for a little bit, but like, don't have kids. Um, don't have pets, and well, Ashley, my partner, we have plants now, so but she keeps them alive, not me. So yeah, I mean, I like, if, like, what is that line? If do stuff you love and you'll never work a day in your life. It's just, yeah, it's just like, I'm like, you just take inputs, and you're like, I don't know, it's still fun to me. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just kind of a simple person.
has there been any patterns you've seen that have been different for what's been fun?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I see more patterns that like keep it um, in similarities. It's like always like, you're not going to be super excited about what you were doing 5 years ago, or maybe it morphed into something, right? You're like, oh yeah, because I feel like a lot of the ideas are like based off of other ideas, and it's probably all, stuff I learned when I sat next to this guy who was super into DRY, don't repeat yourself, programming, and it's just like that got in my mind, and I'm like, okay, this isn't dry enough. How do we make it drier? So, it's just like that, and then you just like riff off into these wild, you know, frameworks and solutions, and yeah, I think I wrote the first JavaScript templating language. It's called Gemplet back in 2006. There wasn't anything that, and the cool thing about it was it actually compiled to JavaScript, so you could have these Gemplet files, and then you'd compile them to JavaScript. And JavaScript, it was pre-Node, right? It's just starting to catch on, like doing clean JavaScript in the browser instead of just horrid stuff. But yeah, um, I don't know. And then somebody, took that idea and ported it to like Lua and called it Lemplet or something like that. It's just like, yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's kind of a wild ride. But I do feel like when I saw Wise, I'm like, this is it. This is like, this encapsulates. That's why I said it's really hard to describe all the things. Like, here's some interesting things. Like, I just noticed one day, I'm like, oh, it'd be really easy to use the toolchain that compiles closure into a native binary, since YAML script compiles the closure and then, evaluates it. What if I just take any YAML script program that you happen to wrote and you just say, ys tech binary, that file, and it just creates a native binary for you.
Hmm.
Things like that. So, but also, what if you could write, it was kind of that shared library. It was like, um, what, YAML script is even higher level, I feel like, than Clojure. Clojure I kind of think of as my assembly language. Sorry, Clojure guys, but that's how I see it. Because Lisp is a really normal type of way to generate code in, right? It's hard to mess up. Just keep your parentheses balanced and you don't have to worry about much. So it's great that way. But with YAML script, I try to make it, I just program it in a lot. And if I don't like something, it doesn't last long. And I know that you've only seen a couple examples. The Helmwise stuff are kind of focused in a certain way. But if I were to show you some other code, it's like, actually, I have a YAML script program that will take okay, so there's a site called exorcism.org. Do you know that one?
No.
It's a free language learning site. It's great. It's like exercise-ism, so it's exorcism, not exorcism. And it's great. It's free. It's volunteer driven. It's been around for a long time. They have 75 languages. One of them is YAML script. So I took all of last summer. It's a lot of work to get a language learning track YAML script onto exorcism.org. And this is where we cut because what was I? Forgot what I was bringing. Oh, all right. Sorry, you're gonna have to cut that out, I think. But I think it's been going pretty good otherwise. Okay, so yeah, there's also something called Rosetta Code. Are you familiar with Rosetta Code?
Yeah.
Okay, I actually have met Mike Mole, and something happened this morning. Rosetta Code went down. It might be down right now if you check, but and I reached out to Mike and I'm like, hey, your site's down, and he's like, yeah, this is what's going on. I'm like, oh, I think I can help you when I get done with this, fork and find out podcast I'm doing. So that's what I'm gonna help him get that back up if it's not up and running right now. There's a domain registrar thing. Anyway, yeah. So I wrote something in 2012 or something. I scraped all of Rosetta Code, so it was like, and I do it like whenever I think about it. It's not prompt or whatever, but it's about 120,000 individual program files. It's like, I think they're coming up on 1,000 languages, 950 plus languages against 1,500 programming tests in a matrix in a media wiki. Really janky, but like also pretty cool. And it's, there's a Rosetta Code data project on GitHub where you can just clone the entire thing. And so I wanted to make sure that my exorcism solutions they have like 150 standard problems that are exposed a different amount in different languages. Python has a ton, and you had to have 20. I have 60. YAML script has 60. So I wanted to take these programs and compare them to code written in other languages. And so I wrote a comparison program in YAML script that would, just basically make a GitHub gist. And you can do little collapsible sections in GitHub. So it's with, 74 other languages comparison, and then it shows the number of lines of code. And then I'm like, oh, how do I compare against Fortran or Go or Haskell or there's some really odd ones. But anyway. So that was a lot of fun. And I'm like, I don't have to be, the shortest program. It's not like a golf language, but I just want to make sure that I'm in the right realm of, is this a good working language? Is this how I would expect to program? And I think it's really quite close to that. I used to write a new YAML script program and I would come up with 20 things I wanted to change. Just little things, and now every once in a while I'll find one or two.
What do you think? What do you think the next 5 years of YAML looks like? If we go ahead, it's 2030. Where do you think we're going to be?
Yeah, with I don't know. It's just such a wild time,
Yeah.
Like I'll keep pushing. I think YAML script is the future of YAML, and I'm just going to quickly explain why. So, because here's the problem with YAML is it's a giant spec. It's very, very detailed and very easy to get wrong. And in fact, we have a YAML test suite, and in 2021, not a single language passed the test suite, and it wasn't even it was just the start of a test suite, you know. So it's like all of these implementations, they work good enough in their own language, but you know, they just have all these like little edge cases or minor discrepancies, so they don't really work good between each other. And that's what we originally signed up for. At the same time, we wanted to put out the next version of YAML, YAML 1.3, and we have a bunch of ideas of what we would do. Um, you know, and even ways to do that without breaking the world. But the problem with that is you put out a new spec version, and it's taken people like years to just make the ones that they have. Nobody's ever going to implement your next version of YAML.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something anybody wants to do. But what if there was one YAML loader that worked the same in every language, shipped to every major language that uses YAML, and the day that 1.3 or whatever the next YAML version, spec version is, it was ready to go and it was full featured, did comments like we were talking about, did everything. And if there's a bug in Python, it had the same bug in Ruby, and that same bug fix made by a Haskell person would affect that same person's bug in Java, right? They'd all be the same. So, whereas maybe the spec wasn't the best way to make YAML. Maybe it should have just been, I don't know, implementation. I don't know. I say both, right? So it's like, I'll make the spec, people can still implement it. And I don't think YAML script will be the only implementation to use, but it will be the one that will evolve and be the most correct with YAML for all languages. So I think that's really important. Even without the scripting thing, you can turn off all the scripting capabilities of YAML script. Obviously, you don't want to expose some of the things that it can do, like make web calls, database calls,
Sure.
whatever, or access file systems or parts of file systems. Yeah, that's all configurable by both the user and by the consumer. So,
Well, Ingy, thank you so much for coming on and telling us all about the past, present, and future of YAML. I think it's been fascinating, not even realizing that most of my career has been evolved around YAML in some way, because I was writing Ansible pretty early on. Even Salt's for config management was YAML based. And while there was always this like Python or JSON sort of bits and in other pieces, it was all a subset of YAML in some way. So that's really fascinating.
It's really rad. I didn't know YAML powered so many things.
Yeah, I didn't either, to be honest. I mean, like when I went to KubeCon and just saw the amount of YAML in the world, it kind of messed with me a bit. You know, it's a bit crazy.
Where can people find you online? Or is there a place that you want people to find you online?
Absolutely. I'm like always can use another friend. YAMLscript.org/INGYDOTNET. We can put that down in the links.
Yep.
There's just a page of all the ways to contact me. So, it doesn't have my address, but if you ask me, you can come over and we'll do a barbecue or something. So.
Perfect. We'll have it in the show notes.
All right.
Thank you so much,
Justin. And thanks, Autumn. It's been awesome. And you guys do a really good job of making the podcast flow really well. I really enjoyed doing this with you guys.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just nerds that are interested, and so it's fun. It makes it really easy when there's an interesting topic.
When am I gonna see you again? Are you going to do you guys go to all the KubeCons? Or North America's, at least?
Autumn only wishes. She doesn't tend to go to the KubeCons.
I wish so hard, and then all my friends have fun without me, and then Justin sends me pictures. It's cruel.
So cruel. It's cruel, Justin.
I will be at KubeCon North America in Atlanta. Yeah, that's in November. So
I think I'll be there too. So let's hang out.
Sounds good.
All right. Take care, guys.
Thank you everyone for listening, and we will talk to you again soon. Thank you for listening to this episode of Fork Around and Find Out. If you like this show, please consider sharing it with a friend, a coworker, a family member, or even an enemy. However we get the word out about this show helps it to become sustainable for the long term. If you want to sponsor this show, please go to fafo.fm/sponsor and reach out to us there about what you're interested in sponsoring and how we can help. We hope your systems stay available and your pagers stay quiet. We'll see you again next time.